28, 47, 51, 55, 76, 106, 135, 147, 148, 152, 180, and 184. The committee now proceeds to the fifth debate. Themes are economic development and innovation and technology. The policy areas covered by the relevant heads are commerce and industry, economic development other than energy, Belt and Road, financial affairs, innovation and technology industries, broadcasting and telecommunications, and maritime and aviation. 6 members, namely Mr. Raymond Chan, Mr. Jeremy Tam, Mr. Dong Kwok Hong, Dr. Kokaki, Mr. Nathan Law, and Mr. Edward Yu, have given notice to move a total of 19 amendments to reduce the various sums for 13 heads read out by the clerk just now. Details of the amendments are set out in Appendix 1D to the script. Members may now proceed to a joint debate on the amendments to the 13 heads. Members have been informed that there are about 5 hours for the committee to conduct this debate. I will first of all call upon Mr. Chan, Raymond Chan, to speak and move amendment number 28 set out in Appendix 1D to the script, to be followed by other amendment proposals in sequence, but they may not move amendments at this stage.
Mr. Raymond Chan, I moved Amendment 28 as set out in Appendix 1D to the script, and that is to slash the estimated expenditure for personnel remuneration of the CNSD. I have moved 10 amendments in this debate, and I don't believe that I have time to elaborate on all of these. But first of all, I will have to explain why I have to cut the expenditure of the CNSD. One of the things that I've considered is that ACNSD, in relation to the by-census, has committed a great mistake. 2 laptop computers have been lost. From June to August last year, CNSD conducted the by-census, and 2 laptop computers have been lost. Recently, we have discussed the loss of computers by the REO at Asia Expo. The millions of voters of information has been lost, and we have moved a motion to reprimand the REO. And later on, we found that the LCNSD has lost 2 laptop computers as well. But in terms of the way of dealing with it, I think the CNSD has performed worse than the REO. Some members of the public have sent an email to legislators, and they asked the CNSD about this. And the CNSD said that, yes, we have also lost 2 laptop computers, but they are just laptop computers. And they have and triggered the remote control system to delete information of one of the laptops. But for the other one, since the questionnaires have not been completed, 12 households with a total of 64 people's information have not been cancelled. The CNSD has not covered up deliberately the issue, and after the incident, it has reported the case to the police and informed the residents affected and also the Privacy Commissioner's office, and the Privacy Commission has completed the audit and the compliance, and they said that they are satisfied with the CNSD's remedial actions, but it doesn't mean that they are not to be criticized. It involves a detailed personal data. CNSD has not taken the initiative to come clean, so obviously is deliberately cover up. If not for some media inquiries and some informants, then up to today, members of the public would not know about it. Recently, because of the usage incident, we come to learn that government departments, when they commit a mistake, they try to pull wool over people's eyes. Well, what they should do is they should give us a good account as soon as possible. Some IT friends said that even if CNSD's computers have double passwords, they have to tell us the situation when these two laptop computers are lost. When the computers are still opened, when they are lost, then it's easy to get the data within them. Now, if the CNSD just uses the normal technology, even with double password, people can just break open or get the data with a simple software. So the government has said that the experts have been appointed to look at whether the encryption system can effectively prevent data leakage. The government thinks that a third-party, independent party, should look into the matter. CNSD said that we've consulted the computer experts within the government. The risk of the loss of data is very not possible. The documents will close down automatically 5 to 10 minutes. And they also said the basic information is only contained in the computers. And the hackers would say take 1 year to hack into the data, so they won't do that. Well, no matter it's the government or the CNSD, they are trying to allay people's worries, but in their explanation, well, they did not explain clearly. You want to ease people's mind, you should come up with good justifications and explanation. Try not to play down the matter. In the electrical, when we discussed this subject, we said that we don't want to waste these laptop computers, and after the buy-census is done, the laptop computers should be donated to those in need. If, say, the laptop computers, say, are again used 5 years later for buy-census, then they will become outdated. So donation is the best approach. But the loss of computers has worried people. For the laptop computers, have all the information been cancelled? Can people try to reinstate or restore the data? Well, we don't have an answer up to today because the 5,084 laptop computers have been donated to some organizations, but the names of the organizations have not been disclosed. I don't think is transparent enough, and computer experts doubt it. While Androids without encryption and also laptops should not be passed on lightly to other organizations for fear of leakage of data. Now, if the programs and the software have not been encrypted beforehand, and even if all the data are cancelled, it's easy to try to get the data. While he's trying to do a demonstration for second-hand Android mobile phones, well, the data have all been cancelled and the original mode has been restored. But then it's easy to retrieve the WhatsApp records on the mobile phone. It just takes less than half an hour. So I'm very worried from the loss of this laptop computer incident. Maybe these 5,000 laptop computers are problematic as well, because we're not sure about whether all the data have been deleted and cancelled. In fact, government departments have been losing data storage devices all the time. The Audit Commission said Customs, EPD, Highways Department, and OGCIO in the previous 6 months have lost 107 non-consumable products, in valuing $450,000, and 32 of them have to do with computers, laptop computers, etc. And maybe some data have been lost, but then the Security Bureau has not been alerted, so it's going against the security protocols. I hope that the government in the future, in handling such IT devices, have to be more prudent. So if there is any loss of data, they should take the initiative to report the same to the public. Another thing about CNSD that I would like to talk about, in the by-census last time, well, they have rejected our request, and that is to include in the questionnaire the option of a same-sex spouse and same-sex partner. And there is no third category apart from male and female in the gender item. Now, maybe the government thinks that such information is useless, they're not going to use it, and they refuse to collect it. I think whether it's useful is something to be decided upon by the society. And I think it shows you are respecting the respondents if you collect that kind of information. So I hope that in future census, the CNSD should take heed of this view. And next, I would like to say something about Head 55, and that is about the CEDB, telecommunications and creative industry branch, and that is also proposing a cut in the remuneration. One thing that I would like to talk about, the licensing for free TV. Greg So, the secretary, announced that this EXCO has rejected the application from Hong Kong TV network, and it also just granted the license to Fantastic TV and Entertainment TV, because they said that they want to take a gradual approach in introducing competition. They are worried that the market will not be able to sustain the operation of 5 stations. Up to now, the government has not yet given the scoring for the Hong Kong TV. How come that they pick 2 out of 3 applications? Maybe it's not the personal decision of Greg So, but as the secretary and the head of the telecom and creative industry branch, he should be held responsible. What is the latest development this year? 3 years have passed. Mr. Ho Pei-him, chairman of the OFCA, he's just stepped down in March. He again raised the matter. Among the 3 stations, he said, well, Hong Kong TV network put up the best of a performance in this application, but the government has not accepted the OFCA's recommendation, instead issued 2 free TV licenses, and Hong Kong TV is rejected. Ho Pei-him said that he was then the chairman of OFCA and of the CA, rather, and he was very surprised by the decision and very disappointed too. And Ambrose Ho said that what he was disappointed most was not that there was no license issued to Hong Kong TV, but that there are so many queries raised by the public. The government hasn't given the public a satisfactory answer. It's just rehashing the old lines. They are going by a gradual and progressive approach to introduce competition. And this is based on the consultant's analysis and so on. But we know that the consultant's report and also the OFCA's recommendation is that the license should be issued. So there is a gap between the government's decision and the public expectation. And what is the reason? Now, when Ambrose Ho assumed office in 2008, he wanted the public to have the perception that CA would deal with matters fairly and justly. And there have been many suggestions that there are too few free TV choices in Hong Kong, and there are 3 new applications coming on board, and he find that very exciting. And 3 applicants had their own strengths, and the public definitely will benefit from more choices. Now, on the issue of free TV, the government has not adopted the recommendation of the CEA, has not heeded professional views, and is ignoring the public sentiment. So perhaps we should also cut the salary of the OFCA as well. The government said that it has regard to a basket of factors. Now, by the experience of Hong Kong TV, we can see what bodes for the future of Hong Kong. And it goes against the usual, business way of doing things. So given this president, who dares to invest anymore, to do a lot of advanced works before bidding. They thought they have done the best job. They have made a good analysis of the market. But surprisingly, the government said that we don't want vicious competition. We don't want TV stations to close down. This should not be the responsibility of the government. The government's duty is only to provide assistance and encourage competition. And they should not fear there is too much competition. The government has been saying that there is this positive non-intervention policy. Now it has changed. This is suitably or appropriately proactive policy. This is floated by CY Leung. The government has not been doing its job properly. It's moving the goalposts all the time. As a result, our TV industry is worsening. I would look at the first policy address of CY Leung. He mentioned how the cultural and arts, the creative and cultural industries in Hong Kong have been so brilliant, and Chinese and Taiwanese companies are trying to buy products from Hong Kong, etc. But now, Hong Kong's products are lacking far behind those in Taiwan, Korea, and the mainland in terms of our quality. And I think the government should take the blame. The government now is speaking about supporting the film industry, but as far as TV industry, there is zero support. We don't need your support, but at least you should not stand in our way. I hope that the next term of government can present a broadcasting and TV policy which can help those who are really keen on developing the industry.
Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Chairman, I request a quorum count.
各位委員。
Members, I'd like to remind you that according to the arrangements for this debate, the debate will draw to a close at about 3:15 this afternoon. I will ask officials to speak at around 1:30. After that, I will invite members making amendments to speak again. And after the relevant members have spoken, this debate will draw to a close. Members who would like to speak, especially those who have not spoken, please press the request to speak button as soon as possible. Honorable Jeremy Tam. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I'd like to slash $2.9502 million from Head 28, which is about the annual expenditure for the personal emoluments for the Director of Civil Aviation. Ever since I have become a legislative councillor, I can see that there are problems of different extent plaguing the CAD. When I submitted the motion to move the amendment, I intended to say that this had more to do with the former DCA, but the director had left his office and he had actually passed away. So I am really talking about the post of DCA and also Mr. Lee Tin-Chu, who is now the incumbent. I would be commenting or even criticizing the DCA, and that has led to this motion today.
Last year, the Raytheon auto-track system gave rise to some problems. My staff gathered some information, and there were 800 times that the system got into trouble. And we tried to gather information about when the problems occurred, and we tabulated a chart, and there were 8 pages of problems that were identified. The Director General could have avoided all these problems, or could have minimized the extent of the problems. I'd like to take this opportunity to conclude what we saw over the past couple of months and how the CAD dealt with the problem regarding the Raytheon Auto-Track 3. It was September or October last year that this was commissioned, and there was a long delay. It was expected that it would take 3 to 4 years to be commissioned, but it wasn't until September or October last year that it was commissioned. Before it was fully commissioned, on the 27th of October, in Zhuhai there is a low-fly zone, and there was some information that was input into the system, and problems occurred, and they switched back to the old system. Now, this new air traffic management system gave rise to problems, and there was a first. This is of concern to the public. I have received some complaints from the staff, and it was said that there were questionnaire surveys for the staff when the air traffic management system was introduced. They were asked whether they were confident or whether there was any room for improvement. The questionnaire survey wasn't conducted solely for this exercise. It was done in the past as well. Some staff, CAD staff, told me that if they said that they were not confident, then they would be hauled into the boss's office and queried why they replied like this. and they were told that this might have some implications on their promotion, and they would refill the questionnaire survey. If I heard from one single person, it would not make me worried, but I've received complaints like these from a couple of CAD staff, and they could name the management staff who were acting the way they did. So then I figured that it wasn't simply a technical issue, it was very much a management issue. And then I spoke out, and thereafter there were many more incidents that were reported in the media. Some of them were from me. I decided to speak out. For others, I wasn't aware of them. Like, for instance, on the 14th of October, there were 2 planes at a height of 40,000 feet, and they were flying head-on. There was a minute gap that they could have collided head-on. It was the staff who were monitoring the old system that alerted the staff on the new system. They were alerted to the possibility of 2 planes possibly colliding head-on. The CAD said that the minimum requirement would be 5 nautical miles, and there was a clearance of 15 nautical miles. If you look at 2 planes, they were flying in opposite direction. We have to find out exactly where they are. I've asked many air traffic controllers, those who were newly recruited, and also those who have a wealth of experience, 20, 30 years of experience behind them. They all told me that if they left till the last minute of 15 nautical miles to give the alert, it would not be right. And the media became concerned about this. On the 15th of November, the radar system could not show a departing flight position for 12 seconds. And there were media attention given to all these incidents. According to CAD's explanation, these incidents did happen under the old system as well. I've received a whole host of other information that showed that under the old system there were incidents like this, but the number of times and also the reasons that caused this were different. According to CAD, that was because of radar limitation. Of course, the radar is subject to certain limitations. Under the old air traffic management system, the old system has not been switched off, and the staff can spot the location of all the flights. The radar system has not ceased to function. The radar system would be the same for the old and the new system. Everything would be recorded. Now, if you can see something on the old system and cannot see the same thing in the new system, then we cannot say that the radar is failing us because of environmental factors. The CAD on the 20th of November held a press conference. They cited many different reasons, the radar, and also at the border of Hong Kong, they may not be able to see the flights. I think they are. This is very much a red herring. If the flight is too far away, of course you can't see them. But this is a flight that just departed from Hong Kong. More seriously, towards the end of the period, we identified something unusual. I said before, and I say again, that we've spotted some ghost planes, like there were split images of the same plane, and there were flies that disappear from the radar screen, and there were also what I call the flight sandwiches. Between flights, there is a phantom flight that appear in between. The flight is not supposed to be there, and also it would activate an anti-collision alert. The air traffic controller must take this as a fact, that they will not ignore the flight, thinking that the system is getting into trouble. Certainly they would take this seriously, and I mean, this is like crying wolves. If these phantom flies appear too often, the air traffic controller will be under tremendous pressure. If you are looking at the screen, an alert comes up, your attention will be drawn to that particular location, and you would be distracted. And this is of concern to the staff, but the CAD said that this is nothing serious, and this is only a teething problem, as they said. I beg to differ. The phantom flights still appear as we speak. This system has been in operation for 6 months, and they're still encountering these kind of problems. Now, how did the CAD deal with the problem? They were not sufficiently proactive in dealing with the issue. They were more proactive in identifying those who leaked the information. There was internal circular that prohibited staff from saying anything lest they would be penalized, they would be disciplined. I think they are avoiding the issue. This is indeed an issue. It is something of concern. And the frontline staff told me that they try to reflect the situation to the senior management, but they're not sure where the issues would be blocked, at what level they're not sure. So they have the concerns, and therefore they try to seek help from outside. And there is no reason why we should penalize these whistleblowers. The civil servants are risking so much. They're not trying to do it for fame. They try to be anonymous, and they also approach the media about the problems. So the civil servants are working under tremendous pressure. The FDP also got into trouble, and the flights were affected for 15 minutes. And the Director General said that aviation safety wasn't compromised. I agree that there was no immediate implication on aviation safety, but in the sky, everything changes very rapidly. If there is something that occurred that requires the assistance of the ground staff, the air traffic controller may not be in grips of all the information. The CAD said that there would be a GPS technology that would be used, and that there will be no problems at all. But has this system been fully activated? The answer is no. All the flights below 29,000 feet are not mandated to equip with the GPS. So there is a bit of a gap. So it's not the case that everything is foolproof. It's not the case that through this GPS system we can track all the flights. And then we had the electronic system, electronic slip system, and there were some problems. And I'd like to talk more at the next around. What happened has already happened. I think we have to identify solutions after something has happened in order to do a better job in future. The air traffic management system has been in use for 6 months. There are still problems, although the frequency is not as high as in the past. Is the CAD determined to resolve all the problems? I mentioned the management problems. I mentioned the questionnaire survey, and I have not been given any reply. We lodged a complaint with the THB, and CAD was instructed to come up with a report, and then they would decide whether investigation would be in order. Now, this is something in black and white. This is not just my words, right? I hope you will consider my CSA.
Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, Madam Deputy, this session is about economic development and innovation and technology. We will spend 5 hours on this debate. Well, even the pro-establishment members will agree that we're not going to have sufficient time to discuss this thoroughly. They've been talking about developing the economy. We should have innovation and technology. Mr. Nicholas Young, well, 5 years ago, 689 said that INT to be developed, and then later on you assumed office. But I found that you didn't have much to work on in your portfolio. When the 689 led a delegation to the mainland, you didn't join the delegation. When we talk about economic development and innovation and technology development in Hong Kong, well, pardon me for being very frank here. There was this mainland saying, well, the Communist Party was like the moon is wavering, it stands all the time. Every 5 years, we have new economic development policies and directions, and we want to develop certain industries. Madam Deputy, you joined the LegCo in 2008. What about the 6 pillar industries as mentioned by Donald Zhang? Where are they now? What about the Islamic economy? We had a heated discussion on these as if they are real initiatives. There was no filibustering back then. We discussed this and we trusted in him. And, well, all these was to no avail. It's not that we haven't discussed this and we didn't want to do it. The key is that our greatest trade partner or sovereign state, well, there have been changes in their economy. Well, let me give you an example. Since 2003, we reached the rock bottom and then we rebounded after that. Then 12 years later on, we found that our economy was very in a single model in a way, and we've been spending public funds on building infrastructures to drive the growth of the economy. Thirdly, our infrastructure is not there to enhance Hong Kong's internal and external economy and our competitiveness. We are relying on the integration of Hong Kong with the Guangdong and Shenzhen areas. So on this matter, I must point out that our officials in charge of the economic portfolio, they don't have to think. They just follow what the mainland's advice. For Qianhai and the Loop, where Qianhai has been established, and for the Loop, we have to depend on the Secretary for INT to champion the project. We don't know what we will do at the Loop. We know that we will develop the land there. And for Hong Kong, we see a huge influx of Chinese capital into Hong Kong. That's the greatest change that we are seeing. And what does it lead to? And in Hong Kong, everything is being commercialized, including things related to our livelihood, our community, our services and facilities and the community. So now after all these things are commercialized, then we are seeing these capitalized and securitized later on. Then that's all plain sailing. That's what they said. So everything is subject to speculation, just like shares and securities. Chairman. In our economic development, as I said, the Hang Seng Index, well, the constituent shares there, well, over half of them are mainland capital, 60% even. And many of the banks in Hong Kong have been acquired by others. And that leads naturally to another phenomenon, and that is in these profit-making sectors and businesses. Well, the policy for these businesses is made here and also the relevant bureaus. The two secretaries are there. We've slammed you for your free TV policy. Wow, this is exactly what's happening in the TV industry as well. What is the mainland's policy towards the mass media in Hong Kong? Has they got to play a part? Well, if you look at Hong Kong's mass media and the electronic media, and you see that China controls much of the shares, including the CCTV and also recently what's happened to the cable TV. So we are being controlled by mainland capital. It's been turned into a profit-making tool. Well, the same goes for the property business. For our economy, well, we've been talking about the AIIB recently, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. What are they doing? We don't know. For the AIIB, the registered capital is $100 billion US. So what role can it play? What function can it do? And what good does it do to Hong Kong? We don't know. In the AIIB and also Belt and Road Vision, apart from giving money to these two initiatives, we have no say over them. Let me cite a simple example. In 2016, the investment amount is $1.37 billion US. And many of the projects are being located around us. For example, in Myanmar, there is a power generation plant. The cost is $20 million US, and Pakistan hydropower plant expansion projects. We don't have any say on that, or we don't play a part in that, because they are using the, they are seeking assistance from the World Bank. And for Myanmar, in terms of credit rating, they can't repay the debt. So in other words, when we take part in the AIIB, we are really pour money down the drain with no cost effectiveness to speak on. And in Hong Kong, what about the economic development here? we say that we have this vision. We will prosper when we take part in the AIIB. We will have a better future. And in the Belt and Road Initiative, we would make use of our local advantages to gain more money. But, Chairman, I would like to ask, CY Leung just led us on a delegation to visit the powerful, the rich people to a visit to the Great Bay Area. Is it a Great Bay Area related in any way to AIIB? So you don't practice what you preach. The economy at the Great Bay Area is that that Hong Kong people will pay money to build this Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge, so that we build this bay economy, and then we need an extra $400 billion to reclaim the land, and then we have the 2030 plus Lantau development plan, and 900,000 people will be housed there. What have all these got to do with Belt and Road Initiative? We are putting $400 billion to have land reclamation. We're excluding the old cost overrun in XRL, Lantau BCP, and Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Actually, we are paying a lot, real money, into all these projects. And AIIB is lending to projects interest-free, and these projects will use the overcapacity and the outdated equipment from the mainland, and that is in the form of syndicated loans. So what is this? We capitalize, we turn everything into sort of capitalized forms, and there will be securitization. And then what follows is endless speculation. That's why our land is getting more costly, and we're still using hundreds of billions of public money to form land between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, which is subject to further speculation. What Mr. Grexo and Nicholas Young said is all nonsense. You are just tying it with the initiative of a 1 hour living circle, and also the integration between Hong Kong and Guangdong. Well, we are paying the bigger share, while the other party is paying the smaller share. Well, for syndicated loans that have to be taken out with the banks, but Hong Kong banks have been acquired by other parties already. So in other words, our GDP has doubled, but then the grassroots are worried about their retirement life, and if they have work, they are worried about their low pay and so on. So in other words, Hong Kong people have toiled hard in their work, but they are not sharing in the success of the economic benefits. The kings don't haul up the lumps of rock themselves. The kings throws feasts and parties. They are not paying for them. The workers pay for those feasts instead. So in Hong Kong's economic development, we are just subject to the economic development on the mainland. There is a lot of hot money from the mainland, so it gets into Hong Kong, and the enterprises are buying land in Hong Kong, and we can't control them. We even lend them some loans. So this is the polarization of the economy, the reason for the polarization of the economy. So that's why half of the people are making less than $14,000 a month. So that's why there are so few members here in the chamber, because we are not discussing how we should improve Hong Kong people's lives and how we can afford our housing and how we can save some money ourselves to provide for our retirement, how we can provide for our children's education from our income. So a small group of companies, especially those funded by China, are using our public monies to build white elephant projects. They are spending public money to drive the development, the prosperity of the financial market. I don't have enough time to speak my mind, but you have stopped our filibustering, so I'll save my my words for the next session. Dr. Kokaki, 151, and that is to cut the salary of the secretary for CED for 3 months, to pay for him. Hong Kong is a business city, and we are attach a lot of importance to economic development. But what is CEDB doing? Is creating troubles. First is on the Disneyland project. In the previous term of government, we had this unequal treaty. We ceded land, paid the money, and we built this Disneyland. Well, Walt Disney paid a little, so they paid a smaller share, while they got all the profits. So that's a fact.
What is more outrageous is that we are continuing to be milked by them. We know that under this unequal treaty, we know that they are getting huge profits, and yet we are still giving them $5.4 billion. The Disneyland is giving us outdated attractions. Allow me to put it bluntly. Before, we did not have the Shanghai Disneyland, and you could still say that we wanted to attract more tourists to come to Hong Kong. But now, Disneyland has got our money, and then it said loud and clear that they had signed an agreement to build Disneyland in Shanghai. And they're giving us the short change. And what should we do? We are still bowing to them. I remember at the FC, we asked the secretary, what is the stance of the Disneyland in this negotiation? And then he said, take it or leave it. He told councillors. This is really so classic coming from him. And how could the secretary ask Lechko to endorse this? This is like try it, fights. You say take it or leave it. And then Mr. Lau came to the meeting, and we asked him whether he knew anything about the negotiation. He said, no, I know nothing because I was not party to the negotiation. So how come you took this official to the FC meeting who knew nothing about the negotiations? And why would have the government swallowed this? And these $5 billion, we are paying hard currencies. We are forming the site. We would put up the buildings, while the Disneyland is responsible for what? There will be some money for designing the rides and programming and props. Well, it's easy to cook the books. It's just like doing refurbishment for your home. The design fee can run into huge sums of money. And it's easy for Disneyland to cook the books. But while the Disneyland is said to be paying a bigger sum this time around, our shareholding will decrease as a result. If we had done better, if we had built our own tourist attractions, if we had been proactive in talking to other thematic parks, or we have been more creative in building our own tourist attractions, we would not have ended up in this mess. And we are giving them $5 billion, and as if they are giving us so much in return. And the pro-establishment camp members were saying that this is for the right of the children. We don't even have a convention on the right of the children, and mentally ill children have to wait 3 years to be treated. What kind of rights of the children are we protecting? And our children are subject to the BCA without a choice, and it is as if Disneyland is giving our children their rights. So the first thing is Disneyland. Second, food trucks. The entire CED Bureau is doing this as a kind of innovation, but it is again so messy. People could not make ends meet after 2 months of operation, so you relaxed the rules, you allowed them to be parked in more places, but this is a doomed attempt. First, the pilot truck scheme is not addressing the needs of the public. We already said that, first of all, you should allow them to park at locations with a big people flow. We've been to California, New York, and other cities, and you usually see food trucks where people gather, but not so in Hong Kong. You park them in Timbuktu, and like at the Asian Expo, there is hardly anybody there except during events, and people have to leave the air-conditioned venue to come out to patronize the food trucks. But of course, at Asian Expo, food is hugely expensive, and therefore people are patronizing that food truck there. Are you heeding the interest of the operators? The entire cost for the truck and including the kitchen, that would fetch a bill of $700,000 to $1 million. No small operator can afford that kind of money. In other places, you need to fork out less cost to run a food truck. And there are not such strict regulations, and people did not have to spend $1 million on a food truck, and people were allowed to make their own food trucks elsewhere. But our officials, of course, would wanted to put up a grand plan so they could look good at the ribbon-cutting ceremonies. But actually, Hong Kong can do better. Hong Kong has good local community economy. We have bazaars. Have we done those? The CED Bureau is not doing it, and the FEHD under the FHB is made to be responsible for these. Well, these are for attracting tourists, and also this is also good for the local community economy. In the UK, a survey was done saying that such bazaars would return $7 billion in kind of revenue for the country. In every country you look at, they have this kind of bazaar economy. Now, you ask the FEHD to be responsible. Well, I'm sorry for them. They have so much more work. They have to liaise with the Housing Department, the LCSD, the Lands Department, the Highways Department, the Transport Department. And then the CED Bureau says, well, it has nothing to do with you. You say you have nothing to do with the local community economy. And then I will talk about the beauty service industry. The prepaid businesses in Hong Kong are a shame. Consumers are held hostage. They were made to spend on credit card advances, and you turned a blind eye to all that. you should have licensed them, or there should be a mechanism to de-license people, but you refuse to do it. And then again, it is for the FH Bureau to look at the delineation between medical and beauty services. But the medical side is a small part of the beauty services. What about the larger part of the business, which is premised on prepaid arrangements? The CEDB should be maintaining a level playing field in Hong Kong, but if there are these chains and listed companies providing beauty services and they are engaging in a kind of triad blackmail business, how come you do nothing about it? And even a cooling period will not be considered by you. So what are you doing? What kind of CED bureau is that? You're just hurting the economy instead of promoting it. And then I turn to the cruise terminal. It's an eyesore, isn't it? It was decided by Donald Tsang, of course. And the CED Bureau should see how poorly it is operating, how lacking in complementary facilities it is. But you do nothing, and it has become an international laughing stock. The tourists would come here to see no transportation, no shops, and the entire shopping complex is closed. And they say, what kind of a cruise terminal is this? But the Bureau Secretary is not reacting at all. The contractor absconded and he cheated people's money. And you call this being good for the image of Hong Kong? You tell people around the world Hong Kong has this cruise terminal. And fortunately, Hong Kong people know how to survive. We can't depend on the government. We would die if we depend on you. We rely on our own efforts, even if land premium is at an exorbitant level, and without any support from government, Hong Kong people still survive because they work so hard and rely on themselves. But I think the CED Bureau has let us down. And then there is something else. Well, this may not be news, and this is about telecommunications and TV licensing. That is communications and broadcasting. Just now, there is this piece of news reported by a newspaper that the SFC has checked that the recent acquisition of Hong Kong TVB shares is shrouded in a very complex web of relationships. The room for free broadcasting in Hong Kong is being narrowed, and red capital is being introduced into Hong Kong media. So we would be at a par with the mainland. Since 777 Carrie Lam loves to watch live broadcast on CCTV, then perhaps we can just relay signals from CCTV to Hong Kong just like that, because anyway, CCTV operates dozens of channels. Is this the way you approach broadcasting in Hong Kong? Even the administration itself doesn't support digital broadcasting by Radio Television Hong Kong, and other stations can hardly survive. You know, you have no policies. In fact, the Transport Department did not allow cars to have digital broadcasting. So what kind of government is this? And also Hong Kong TV network, it is deprived of a license, and also digital broadcasting, etc. In Taiwan, people did not need digital broadcasting because there are over 100 small capital operated radio stations. But this will not be allowed by the CCP. Therefore, you are not the CED Bureau. You are just here to make Hong Kong more reliant on the mainland's economy, and you are narrowing the INT and broadcasting and telecommunications capacity. Well, it would be best if we have filter software. So before 2047, we would be totally reunited with the mainland. And like the mainland, anything that is about telecommunications, communications, and broadcasting, all that would be brought under control. But Hong Kong people are not going to die. If there are still messages that we want to broadcast, even if it is not to the liking of the government, we will do it ourselves. We don't have to take alms from you, but you are holding these sinecure posts, and so we are not progressing, rather we are regressing. So I speak. Mr. Nathan Law. Thank you, Councillor Leung. In this round, I would be speaking on a motion. I'm going to move, and this has to do with $337,000 about the annual estimate for the launching activities for major tourism infrastructure programs. This is under head 152. And I am targeting the building of vast infrastructure and also the direction for our tourism development. According to the Economic Development Panel paper, you are saying we should boost our overall capacity to receive tourists and also to make Hong Kong more attractive. And that is why you are developing tourism infrastructure, including Disneyland expansion, Lantau, and also Boundary Shopping Mall and also Kai Tak.
Tourism is a pillar industry. Nobody is underestimating its importance. It is important for development, but what I'm against is that we should take away the original or the nice environment in the name of the development of tourism. It's not just about major infrastructure. It's also about the 2030 plus model. It's also about the minor community projects that are making life difficult for the grassroots people, and the landscape in small community would be destroyed. Like the Pt1 shopping mall renovation, it is redeveloped into an international school, and they couldn't get an international school, and they tried to develop this into a shopping mall for the individual visit scheme travelers. The shopping arcade is serving the community. If this is turned into a shopping mall for the IVS visitors, it would be very detrimental. In the North District, in the Tuen Mun District, there are so many shops that used to be selling stationery, and there were local cafes, and they've been turned into goldsmith or jewelry shops, and this is really causing problems for the residents. And there is a lack of policy in the development of tourism here. The other thing is the massive scale tourism infrastructure. It is different from just converting some of the shops in the community. Let's take a look at the Disneyland expansion program. This is one of the focuses of the community recently. There are so many problems with regard to the expansion. The government is the major shareholder of the Disneyland, but it is bound by the directors' agreement. The government refuses to disclose the details on ground of confidentiality. The government cannot change the instrument that was executed in 1999, we have no option but to accept the bad deal that Dr. Kokaki was referring to. That the second phase development area, 60 hectares, would be sitting idle for 10 years. Now, if you look at the Wang Chao project, there are residents who have to be forced out. That's only 20 hectares. Over the past 10, over the next 20 years, the 60 hectares would be lying idle. The government said that there have been a lot of activities that have been organized. In fact, there were only 4 or 5 that were organized over the past decade or so. This is a waste of precious land resources. You may argue that Disneyland has been operating pretty well, and 20 hectares would be set aside for the Disneyland. But we are actually throwing good money after bad year after year. The Disneyland is in the red year after year, and they have these 60 hectares set aside for Disneyland. This is a waste. The government entered into this unequal treaty, and we cannot change this anymore. Now we are injecting $50 billion or $5 billion into it, and it is unjustified, wholly unjustified. The government is devoting money into this loss-making business. Disneyland made about $2 or $3 billion over the past 10 years. Even the pro-establishment member, Mr. Michael Teen, called this a humiliating business deal. We have to make up for the shortfall. This is ridiculous. And what is even more ridiculous is the government's attitude. They say that it is take it or leave it. Mr. Guexo, it has got a nickname, Take It So, not a business card so. Now this is mind-boggling for the people of Hong Kong. The situation now is vastly different from the situation back in 1999 when the agreement was entered into. Mr. Michael Teen said that even if we get back a little bit more, Disneyland will still be making a profit, and they should be tempted to say yes. As businessmen, they would understand that if LegCo has some clout, if LegCo can do something about it, they would concede. But the government has not fought for a better deal for Hong Kong, and this is a major problem for Hong Kong. Lantau and Kai-Tak development, 2030 plus, energizing Kowloon East. From all these documents, we get to see that the government is building the infrastructure, the Southern Central Line, Kai-Tak Cruise Terminal, Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and the Lantau Development Office.
西九故宮博物館等等，呢啲全
Sports Park, and also all these are in the 2030 plus, and this is intended. This is not intended for catering for the needs of Hong Kong people, and this is tie in with the mainland plan. So will this pave the way for the healthy development of our tourism trade? And how many Hong Kong people's chances have been jeopardized? Now, the government has not conducted any archaeological study when the Disneyland was built. Lantau is steeped in history. During the Neolithic age, there were people living there. It is indeed steeped in history with a lot of relics. We have the salt pans in Tai O. We have old temples with 3,000 years of history, and the houses on stilts are also have a long history. And we have the fortresses in Dongchong, we have these glazed ceramics that have been unearthed from Lantau. All these go to show that Lantau has a very high heritage value. All these reclamation that I talked about have failed to look after the heritage and the relics. It is also detrimental to the ecology, the habitat of the Chinese white dolphin, not to mention the marine and traffic pollution. Now, we've heard about these central waters, artificial island, 3RS, Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge. There are so many problems. The collapse of the embankment and the dodgy marine sand that is being used. We cannot imagine the ecological disaster in future. We're storing up trouble for the future. In Central Kong, Wuntong, there are many artists, many musicians who are using the places. In My Little Airport, the film nominated for the Hong Kong Academy Award did use this place. We cannot even keep this important piece of land. There are many industrial buildings that will be converted into shopping malls, commercial space, and shopping malls. Now, there is a love song about To Kwa Wan. It says that they only hope that the Salting Central Line can be built more slowly, and they hope that they can afford the rental in the industrial buildings. This is the sentiment of a lot of the artists and the cultural people. A good transport network would bring convenience, but it would push up the rental. The Western Island West extension has come into operation, and the rental and property prices have escalated hugely. And this is the administration's fault. The government cannot strike a balance between infrastructure development, the convenience, and also the consequences of rental hikes. And this is a result of policy failure. Our tourism sector should not obliterate all the heritage and relics in Hong Kong. They're precious and they are diverse. We cannot have any tourism which will wreak havoc on the heritage in Hong Kong. I think we can do a better job in preservation of the heritage. I don't think heritage and development are on a collision course. If you look at other parts of the world, they have a lot of examples that we can learn from. I don't think we should blindly destroy everything in our path in pursuing development. We do have a wealth of history. We have to make sure that this will become attractions for Hong Kong. In 2017 March, we debated Mr. Yu Si-wing's motion, and we said that the government should preserve the heritage of Lantau and all the sensitive areas. There should be a long-term bazaar policy and develop the cooked food bazaar and arts and culture bazaars. These will become attractions for tourists, while at the same time maintaining the livelihood and also the heritage elements. I try to slash the funding for the infrastructure. It may be $330,000. It may be a tiny amount, but I'd like to show my determination to protect the heritage. Tourism should show heritage and the relics to the visitors. If we develop tourism at the expense of the relics and heritage, then the tourism in Hong Kong would be just skin deep, and Hong Kong would uproot its history, and Hong Kong will become a soulless city. Our culture has been cracked down on, and our route is being removed. So I propose that the expenditure for these infrastructure development should be slashed for a whole year. I'm going to speak again on this particular subject. Mr. or Dr. Edward Yu. Thank you, Chairman. Amendment 178, Head 184, Subhead 9A4 to slash $4.5 billion for Head 184. First of all, this year, Head 184, $4.5 billion recurrent reserve will be wired to the Capital Works Reserve Fund. I must point out that this is going against BL 107. Under BL 107, the Hong Kong administrations should follow the principle of keeping expenditure within the limits of revenue. We should strive to avoid deficits and keep the budget commensurate with the growth rate of the GDP. If you look at the CWRF, you get to see that we're going to have 4 consecutive years of deficit, and the deficit would be worse one year after next. That for the CWRF in 1997-98, it was the expenditure was something like $30 billion.
And in 2016-17, it has risen to $19.8 billion, more than doubled. And according to the estimates of the government and the projections of the government, in the next 5 years, the CWRF as expenditure will rise again. In 17-18, it will rise to $96.1 billion, 18-19, $104 billion, 19-20, $108 billion, 20-21, 125.3, 21-22, $130.8 billion. In other words, the CWRF will amount to over $100 billion. And while in 2012, the amount will over $130 billion. And the income comes mainly from land sales. And this year, we've broken the record in terms of the land sale prices, and the government is continuing to sell land. Then the revenue is only $119.9 billion. In the next 5 years, the income will be around $1.1 billion, 1920, $92.8 billion, and 21-22, $108 billion. In other words, the income is around $100 billion. But then the expenditure will rise to above $130 billion. And the government's estimate that there will be 4 years in the red. 17-18, $9.3 billion in surplus. 18-19, minus $14.9 billion. 19-20, minus $16.1 billion. 20-21, minus $17 billion, and 21-22 minus $20 billion. So by the government's projection, there will be a higher deficit in the CWRF year after year, and it goes against Article 107 of the Basic Law that we should keep expenditure within the limits of revenue. But for the CWRF, the public works projects and the infrastructure projects, well, contracts have been signed for those, and works have commenced. And the government can't reduce the expenditure. So in order to pay for these costly infrastructure projects, they have to damage or destroy the environment and increase land supply. And there are even more economic incentives to jack up the land prices so that there will be more income for the CWRF to the extent that the optimistic projections made by the government can be achieved. Now, when we set up the CWRF back then, to provide for capital works and infrastructure projects, it is a non-recurrent expenditure, so that the recurrent account should not be interrupted or affected, so that the capital works will not affect people's livelihood. So the concept is very clear. For infrastructure projects, they will be funded from the revenue from land sale, and that the livelihood of people will not be affected. The revenue account will not be affected. But for this year's budget, the $4.5 billion from the recurrent expenditure will be transferred to the CWRF, and that goes against the objective of setting up of CWRF way back. If this will continue to channel surplus of operating accounts into CWRF, then funding which is supposed for improving people's livelihood, including healthcare, welfare, education sectors, will be affected, and there will not be sufficient funding for these areas. A lot of people have this misunderstanding. Well, if we sell more land, we can have higher revenue, then the Treasury will have more money to improve people's livelihood. I must point out this clearly. The revenue from land sale will be totally allocated to the CWRF account, and that will not help in improving people's livelihood. And that it will become a revolving door between the land sale and CWRF. The more general revenue can be generated from land sale, the more funds can be used for capital works and infrastructure projects. But for this year's budget, is even more ridiculous. We are doing it the other way around. The land sale revenue will not help people's livelihood, and the taxpayers' money contributed to the recurrent account, the surplus in this account will be channeled to the CWRF for providing for capital works. So we are in effect encouraging more infrastructure to be built in the future. Let's have a higher figure from $13 billion to $15 billion, because if you don't have a sufficient revenue from land sale, you can channel the surplus from the recurring account to the CWRF. We will end up in a financial crisis if we do that, and it's going against Article 107 of the Basic Law. So, well, let's take a look at the phrases used in the budgets in the past few years. I have reviewed those in 15, 16, 16, 17. The infrastructure projects were at a peak. The government knows about this very well. They have commenced so much capital works projects and infrastructure projects, and the expenditure has become beyond their control, and it is rising ever. So that's why they would like to use this surplus from the recurrent account, this $4.5 billion, which is supposed to be used in livelihood issues, it will be reallocated to the CWRF. I hope that members of the public and fellow members can think carefully about this. Think carefully about my amendment. This is to stop the government from channeling the surplus from the recurrent account to the CWRF. The recurrent account, funding from that account is supposed to be used for, say, livelihood sectors like healthcare and education, etc. And these sectors are already suffering from inadequate funds. And the government said that it lacks funds, and as a result, people don't get the drugs they need, and elderly people are not provided with sufficient and proper resources. With a lack of resources in so many livelihood sectors, I think we should make better use of the surplus from our recurrent account. That should be the right approach. But then the government is disregarding public demands, and instead it is proposing to channel the surplus from the recurrent account into the CWRF, into what we call the white elephant projects. We must join hands with fellow members to stop the government doing this, to use the surplus on the CWRF projects. I would like to ask taxpayers, you pay tax? Do you agree that these taxes should be used on livelihood issues? Do you agree that the surplus of the operating account should be spent on white elephant projects, which are seeing cost overrun all the time? Yesterday, I spoke about the cost overrun of public works projects in recent years. One of the main reasons, well, according to the International Construction Cost of 2017, the main reason is that the government has launched too many capital projects at the same time, and as a result, there is a shortage of manpower, materials, and machinery, driving up the drastic cost increase in works projects. And this international study has already pointed out that this is a self-made problem by the government. This is a vicious cycle created by the government itself. And the government knows that the CWRF is rising, so it has a duty to bring it under control. And it should not instead be channeling the surplus of the recurrent account to the CWRF for these white elephant projects. The last point that I would like to make is, recently the government has made a reply to my question when we asked that there is so much cost overrun in many projects. The government said no. For some small-scale capital works projects, there is in fact a surplus. Well, there is tens of billions of dollars in surplus. But then, for this surplus amount, it will not be channeled back to the operating account. In other words, when they seek funding from the FC, they have this inflated amount requested, and whenever the money is not used up, it will not have to be handed back. It will stay within the CWRF to pay again for these white elephant projects. Now, the logic is clear. if there is a surplus of the CWRF, it will not be channeled back to the operating account. How come that the surplus in the operating account should be channeled to the CWRF to pay for the white elephant projects, which are seeing overrun all the time? You must note this. In the next 5 years, Hong Kong will be seeing a risk of economic recession. Now, if there is downward trend in the economy, there is less revenue from land sale, then the CWF will see even a bigger deficit. If we don't try to keep the surplus of our operating account, and there will be a decrease in the tax. Well, your time's up. According to the debate arrangement, the debate will end at around 3:15 p.m. And around 1:15 p.m., I will ask government officials to speak. And after they have spoken, I would also ask the members who have moved of amendments to speak again. And after they have spoken, the debate will come to a close. Those who would like to speak, especially those who have yet to speak, please press the request to speak button as soon as you can. Ms. Tanya Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Well, taxpayers should be worried about what Mr. Professor or Dr. Edward Yu has said. I know that there's been saving in some projects. Well, the amount has not been used up. For example, the Service Reservoir and Happy Valley. This is a project which can improve livelihood. But then for the surplus generated, you can still put it in this CWRF. And, well, this channeling of funds is done secretly. And for the Kai Tak Sports Park, there has been a sum reserved to cover for the cost overrun. And Dr. Kwok said this the other day. Well, you have asked for so much, and of course I will monitor you. But then if you've got some unused, I don't have to hand it over back to you. Then I will just keep it myself. Well, then in that case, you don't have to seek funding from the electrical.
Then that will be very good because every time you will ask a bit more and then you will use the surplus for something you want to do. I speak in relation to amendment number 150151 in relation to the CEDB. In particular, Mr. Ray Chan's amendment, that is the subsidy for Hong Kong for the Trade Development Council. The council itself has a lot of money anyway. Its purpose is to promote Hong Kong's trade. That is also its statutory function. As you know that the TDC is a statutory organization. It has its own development committee. It has this function to perform. It has powers. And then it expands itself into convention and exhibition. And I would like to give you some background information. Some younger generation may not know. Back in the days of 1984, during the Sino-British joint declaration, there was a plan to build the Convention and Exhibition Center in Wan Chai North. At that time, it was the New World Group who got the contract to develop the site. You'll find the information in the electrical library. When the Convention and Exhibition Center was about to be expanded in 1994, it was a slip of the tongue that it was reviewed that during the Sino-British joint declaration, during a time when there were uncertainties, an unfair agreement was signed. New World Group agreed to fund the project at a time of uncertainty. Of course, that's risky, but it's got a lot of things in return. There would be hotel and office development rights going to New World. The management of the Convention and Exhibition Center. At that time, contract was signed with a wholly subsidiary of New World. And in relation to the expansion of Phase 2, there were some doubts cast on these terms. Well, during Phase 2 expansion, does the contract have to go to these wholly owned subsidiary of New World? There was a role to be played by the Hong Kong TDC because a fee would go to the TDC, which turned into its income. At the time when the agreement was signed, it was 6.65 million US dollars, or 5% of the operating income. Well, at that time I could find a lot of information about that, about what happened back then. Not like now, when we're often told that everything is secret, commercial secrets, and everything is withheld. We're only talking about an agreement with a private business. We could see from the FC document of 1994 about major terms in the agreement, these unfair terms. But now if you want to get this similar information, it's very difficult. And at that time, we found information about terms of the agreement. There are only two parties to the agreement, Hong Kong TDC and the wholly owned subsidiary of New World. Well, actually, the Hong Kong TDC could just make easy money. However, they realized that the convention and exhibition business is something that is profitable. The Phase 2 expansion will double the size of Phase 1. And on top of that, there is also the atrium expansion. Well, however, the agreement was signed with the wholly owned subsidiary of New World. And at that time, people asked whether there could be an open tender. And we found that there was a term of non-competition. Christopher Clark was approached to get legal advice. He's a UK silk. And it was learned that breach of this non-competition clause might give rise to legal problems that cannot be overcome. We found the information in the FC document. And we wonder what it was all about. It's clause 4.5.1 saying that the Hong Kong TDC during the period, that is 40 plus 10 years. Well, as long as there was no fault of the wholly owned subsidiary, then there can be an extension of 10 years forever. And it says that during the joint development, at any time, there cannot be another. If the Hong Kong TDC continues to run convention and exhibition business, then TDC has to cooperate with this wholly owned subsidiary. And on top of that, a commercial center will have the same clause applied to it. Well, the secretary is here now. I think the secretary has heard about this anyway. I want to talk about this AMR International report. I'm sure you will talk about commercial secrets. I believe that there is some commercial secrets there. That was a report compiled in 2014. In our Commerce and Industry panel, an executive summary of this report was given to us. This report's important because it is pertinent to this year's policy address, because they wanted to take the Wan Chai sports ground because there was a shortage of 130,000 square meters of convention and exhibition facility in the year 2028. In this report, 15 short, medium, long-term measures have been put in place. These measures do not include taking away the Wan Chai sports ground. So I want to ask about how it's to be implemented. Say, for example, 11 facilities. The the Asia World Expo and the Hong Kong Exhibition Center will have to be expanded, and it may be done at other locations. I want to know more about the AMR report so that we can have a fair discussion. Well, I've been asking the same question of the Secretary for 4 months, and still we haven't heard about anything in reply. This wholly owned subsidiary is called Polytown. Well, you can find the information in the archive of the Legical Library. Each member would be given an envelope if we want to read about some confidential information, as long as we sign it out and return it. I don't know how come that this AMR report is so secretive. Next to the Hong Kong Palace Museum, there is a performance venue. I don't know whether AMR has taken that into account. Well, I want to continue about the avarice of the Hong Kong TDC. The site in red was originally the bus terminal of Wan Chai North. It would become the exhibition station of the Sha Tin Central Line. In Town Planning Board meeting, it was said that this would be developed by the Hong Kong TDC. In the document attached to the 2014 report, it says that medium and long term, the administration will consider increasing facilities. 1.6 hectares of convention and exhibition center would be set aside for such use and also commercial use. It's a sizable site. The secretary talked about the site being used for convention and exhibition use. Perhaps this is not under the scope of the non-competition clause because it says that it's a convention and exhibition center. So I want to ask, does it really have to go to the Hong Kong TDC? But the TDC is tasked to proceed with the design. You don't have to give it to Hong Kong TDC. And I would like to seek legal advice about the non-competition clause about the commercial center. Does it not apply to convention center? If the convention center is counted as a commercial center, that means this non-competition clause will prevail. That is, if the TDC breach this clause, then it might face legal problems that cannot be overcome. So the government will have to pay all the costs for the TDC. So if they can't even deal with the exhibition station, then why would you give them Wan Chai sports ground? How come that if it's commercial, it should have priority over sports use? Polytown has received a lot of money out of it. Well, I thought that, well, at least the administration would negotiate, given that they have signed the unfair term. Originally, it was 5%. In 1997 to 8, it has increased to 6.8. 2002 and 3, it was further increased to 8.08%. TDC will get from Polytown, starting from Atrium, 67 million to, in 2015-16, 176 million. So they don't have to do anything, and yet they receive a lot of money. This is illogical for the TDC to operate like this. I want to talk about hidden agenda. Chairman and Secretary, you should pay attention to this. Apart from convention and exhibition, and if you're minded to develop creative industries, and sometimes these exchange sessions will be done in a different way. And if under the immigration ordinance only agreements is waived, then you will have to think about what other forms of exchange may take place. Mr. Jeremy Tam. When I last spoke, I was talking about reductions, the reduction of $2.8 million and $200. I actually haven't finished. I think that the Civil Aviation Department, the CAD, or the Transport and Housing Bureau should bear the biggest responsibility for the various mistakes of different sizes. I think a problem lies with the management of the CAD. As I've said, the frontline staff face tremendous pressure. They receive questionnaire when a survey was conducted, and the consultant would base recommendations on the result of the survey, whether the system should continue to be used. So this survey is very important. I received complaint from a number of people, double-digit number from the CAD, saying that middle and high management put pressure on them, so that when they reply to the questionnaire, they should say that they are very confident.
I lodged complaints to the authority and also wrote to Professor Anthony Chung about this issue. And the reply was that the Bureau would follow up on the issue so long as I submit substantiated claims. And on the 21st of December, I got in touch with the Civil Aviation Department. The THB would request the CAD to follow up. And if the Bureau had any problems about the report, the CAD would instigate an investigation. And they have been extremely efficient. After I made such claims in the afternoon, at around 10 p.m. the same day, they said that the THB would investigate the THB would investigate the issue. They want to clarify that such claims were unsubstantiated and they were yet to receive a list from Mr. Jeremy Tam. But that afternoon, I actually faxed the list to the THB, and the next day I received a letter from the THB on the 22nd of December. And it said they have received my letter on the 21st of December. And if THB has received any substantial information on officers who were pressured when filling out the survey, they would follow up. And the information provided has been passed on to the Director of Civil Aviation. So the fact is there was a case, and THB would request the CAD to launch an investigation, and the THB might follow up when necessary. And they made it look like I lied, and they wrote to me the next day saying that they knew about the situation. I'm not sure whether it was intentional or not, or whether it was due to miscommunication. But I think you have to give me some justice, and you owe me an apology. But let's look forward. From the incident, we can see governance issues within the CAD. And on the 26th of December at 8 a.m., the two workstations at the ATC center ran into errors, and there was a suspension of 40 minutes, and the ultimate and fallback systems were working properly according to the government. And by February this year, the media outlet FactWire found a lot of information, and they found that in January this year there were 6 incidents with inadequate separation, even though the separation was they meet the 5 nautical mile separation requirement, but there were some minor incidents. So the problem is no longer about missing flight information, and the number of incidents with inadequate separation seems to be going up. And on the 10th of February, FactWire talked about double trajectories or phantom flights. There were more than 80 occurrences, of which 30 led to a false alarm. So we can see that the problem is more serious than what the CAD said. The CAD has consulted an overseas consultant, NETS, and they found the system okay, and FactWire also found that CAD has closed ties with NETS since 2009, and NETS are a key strategic partner. So I really doubt the independence of that investigation. And on the 20th of March, the new ATC center, ATC system underwent an upgrade, or a software upgrade, and the problems should have gone away. The independent expert panel issued an interim report on the 3rd of April, citing technical limitations with the radars and different reasons, and they concluded that the system is not problematic. And on the 10th of April, and the number of personal settings exceeded the threshold. In other words, custom display positions, font size, colors, etc. And we found that there were restrictions to the number of settings, and it cannot exceed 5,000 sets, and the system was halted, and it led to lags, and they switched to the backup system for the first time. In the past, the CAD stressed that there has not been any need to invoke the backup system, but half a year later, on the 10th of April, they had to invoke the backup system. So is this just a teething issue, as the CAD suggested? We did see some software issues. That said, I have to give some credit to the CAD, because after the incident on the 10th of April, I requested the CAD to keep the old ATC system for a longer period. It should have been it's scheduled to be removed by May. But you will see the same problems in the new and old main systems. But the old system is completely independent. They plan to remove that system by May, but they they heeded our advice, and they would assess the situation after the report is out in June. Chairman, no one would doubt that Hong Kong's aviation safety is among top of the world, and this is the and a consensus among the practitioners and the trade. And Hong Kong is certainly a safe aviation hub. We cannot take this for granted, however, and we must be forward-looking and continue to work hard to ensure safety. However, from what we have seen in the past, we saw that the CAD's management style meant that a lot of comments could not reach the upper management. The ATC system is highly complicated. If you are to buy a new system, it might take 5 to 8 years. However, we must not we must consider whether the problems with the existing system could be overcome. I acknowledge that it would take more than 1 or 2 months. Coming up, we have the third runway. Land reclamation is already underway, and our members might have seen that. When we have the third runway, aviation traffic would be even busier. So by then, can our new ATC system accommodate the additional flights? If we have already seen so many problems, well, I'm not saying that there's no time to solve them, but we have to draw the line somewhere. If there are problems we cannot overcome, we must draw the line, and by then we might need to replace the system. I think we can consider when the third runway would be commissioned, and dates it back another 5 to 8 years. I hope the Director General of Civil Aviation would not think that since they have purchased the system and they have spent so much time and money, they have to stick with it. Of course, it's the taxpayers' money, and we should put it into good use. However, if there are issues we cannot overcome, we have to cut our losses. Otherwise, there would be a domino effect. When the third runway is commissioned, if it's capacity cannot be fully utilized due to limitations to the ATC system, we would suffer even greater losses. Nowadays, we are talking about budget overruns of $10 to $20 billion. The ATC system would cost just $1 billion or so. It's really not that much money. By the time the third runway is in place, if it cannot be fully utilized due to limitations of the ATC system, we would suffer more substantial economic losses. And as an aviation hub, we have to focus on safety. So these should be the areas of focus in our future work. So as I said right from the start, I do not want to pick on past deficiencies of the CAD, but I just want to point out what I've seen since the start of May when the new Director General came on board and what our concerns are. We have to defend our aviation safety. Thank you very much. Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you. I finally get more than 2 rounds in this session. I submitted 10 amendments. I spoke on Amendment 59, the Communications and Creative Industries branch of the CEDB. We talked about free TV licenses. The Chief Executive in Council vetoed the CA's decision to grant HKTV a license without giving a reason, and the former chairman of the Communications Authority did not know the reason. Perhaps we cannot hold Mr. Gregory so accountable because perhaps he was reluctant and he could not give the real reason behind that decision.
And that's why I asked whether the administration had a policy on free TV licenses. Well, I think the administration would be better off with none. In fact, there is a policy on free TV, and the policy is to help mainland-owned mainland capital to take over our TV stations or TV companies. Perhaps this is not what Mr. Gregson wants to do, but examples abound to substantiate, evidence abound to substantiate this reasonable doubts on the part of the administration. It's because HKTV is owned by a local enterprise, and therefore it's not easy for mainland capital to take over. So originally 3 licenses were to be issued, but Hong Kong TV was refused, and we end up having 2. And this morning we have headlines. It's a big piece of news. I don't know why the media are not really too concerned about it. Double ownership or double shareholding exposed. La Yuguang is the real man behind it, and TVB is suspected to have hide this fact from the CA. Now, is revealed that the beneficiary owner of TVB is in fact the so-called China Murdoch, Mr. Lai Shui-Kwang. Young Wire. The true ownership or shareholding has never been reviewed. There was a hearing on the clawback or on the buyback, and it's found that Lai Shui-Kwang is in fact controlling this company and TVB in other form of agreement, and it owns 79% of TVB. And SFC wonder if she knows that the real person behind TVB is surnamed Lai instead of surnamed Chen. Now, if even the Communications Bureau doesn't know, that's okay. And it's all right that no wonder Mr. Grexo doesn't know, but that doesn't mean that the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, Communications and Creative Industries Branch should be held responsible. Yesterday, there was a response from the branch to say whether this is a breach of the BO and whether it's against the licensing conditions. And of course, the next step is to consult legal advice. The shareholding of TVB is really a myth. SFC just reviewed yesterday that Lai holds 79% of the interest of IL, and through IL owes 26% of TVB. So CRX is really the real beneficiary of TVB. Chen Guoqiang and Wang Xuehong from Taiwan and Li Shuiguang from the mainland had the three shareholders of YL had disagreement on certain matters. They have a real say. They have the veto approval powers, and then even more ranges as according to the agreement between the ownership. Chen Guoqiang, CMC had the power to require Chen Guoqiang to sell all the shares held by YL. Well, with the broadcasting ordinance, perhaps such information was not submitted to the Bureau, and then there are certain terms, and there is suspicion as to whether TVB has hidden this from the Bureau. Under the BO, owners of licensed TV here must be Hong Kong residents. I think we all understand we don't want a non-Hong Kong resident or non-permanent resident to be in control of our very important media organizations. But because of this buyback, the whole thing is now exposed, and there is a suspected deliberate hiding behind that. And in very extreme case, TVB can have its license revoked because of that, but you don't have to worry. Even Mr. Grexo won't be able to face the consequence because if even TVB is closed, and the consequence can be very dire. And of course, you can issue warnings for 7 times. So you can see that the TV policy for Hong Kong. We're so worried. We worry about mainlandization, and we have real examples to substantiate our fear. I really sympathize with you, Mr. So. You're in the last 2 months of your office, and you have to wait for SFC and also the CA and legal advice, and there is pretty little you can do. We have to wait for the next office holder to take action, and the Communications and Creative Industries branch of the Bureau really has to do something about it. Either you just remove this provision in the BO so everyone can own TV companies in Hong Kong, would it be from Taiwan or mainland or from the U.S. Regarding Mr. Nathan Law's amendment, is really harmless. That is Head 152, Government Secretariat, Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, Commerce, Industry and Tourism Branch. That is to cut the whole year provision for the launching activities, and that is $330,000 odd dollars. So what's the point? This is just a scratching on the surface. Just last week, we approved $4.25 billion. So you're going to cut it. You cut this provision by $330,000 dollars, and this is not just for Disneyland. It is the launching activities for major tourism events. But I do understand why Mr. Law has submitted this amendment. It's not just a loan. Even your party, Madam Deputy, all right, that bypassed the PWSC. But anyway, there were motions passed at the relevant panel. We wanted to help the administration to gain as much bargaining power as possible in this negotiation with Walt Disney. We, of course, don't want Disneyland to close, but our suggestions have all been rejected by the administration. Mr. Greg So said that it was either take it or leave it. So it's either take it or leave it when it comes to this agreement. If you had told us well beforehand, we could have saved a lot of trouble. There is no need for the Chief Executive Officer of Walt Disney to come. So you just tell us, take it or leave it. It's not just the opposition camp who, even the pro-establishment camp, were not happy with this arrangement. And Michael Tian was also not happy. And I think Mr. Bramshek made some very useful suggestions. And somebody said that it is a right of children to visit Disneyland. I would not want the theme park to be taken away from kids of Hong Kong, so I have no choice but to vote of it, said a member present at the meeting. Why are we so, why do we feel so aggrieved? Because we are being ripped off by Disney. The royalty fee will be collected by the parent company, whether Disneyland has made a loss or made profit. And there's a rough estimate by members of the public that is close to $3 billion in royalty collected. We're told that the expansion will bring us $40 billion in economic benefits. It's just your projection. You can ask members present whether they believed you or not. If they genuinely believed you, they would not feel so aggrieved. And then just after the meeting, we read something from a magazine this week. $5.4 billion. The government bowed to Disney, and the big winner is a foreign company. When the government signed the first agreement with Disney years ago, there was an unequal treaty, and there is also a height restriction for buildings surrounding the theme park, because buildings surrounding Disney should not have a clear vision into Disney, and visitors within Disney cannot see those buildings, so that they can preserve this fantasy land idea. And then in the second agreement, this is relaxed. What the government fears most is not that Disney would give up on its expansion plan, and if the second agreement doesn't, it cannot be included, then the height restriction will not be relaxed by Disney. As we know, there is this development plan on East Lantau, and also artificial island on the Brothers Island, Kao Yi, Chao, and also the other developments. In the 2014 meeting of Lantau Development Committee, it was pointed out that the height restriction in the vicinity of Disney should be considered. And in the early stage of negotiations, the government raised this point with Disney, and the latter has given approval in principle that the building height restriction be relaxed around the park. And this one point was identified during examination by FC, and now funding has been approved, and it's found that for Ping Chao, there are property developers starting to resume or to acquire site. An abandoned farmland has been left idle for 4 decades. And the owner of that company is a member of that committee. So whether you call it a conspiracy theory or what, we have reasons to doubt the whole expansion plan of Disneyland. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Mr. Ray Chen is so stubborn. Well, this inequality in information would lead to unequal deals. The deputy chairman was once an executive member, and once you are in the executive council, you have the right to say things and to hear things, and whether remarks are made by somebody in the council can become a fact, and we are here just for window dressing. The chairman has decided that we can only have 5 hours of debate on so many important issues. We have 70 members in this council, and if we only speak once each, there won't be enough time for us.
Well, let me get back to the point. When it comes to innovation and technology, Mr. Young, can you design a program so that we have access to big data to find out why these major infrastructures always overrun? There has been some analysis. Some say that it's because of filibustering, while others say that it's because of rise in wages, and some others say that just like what Dr. Edward Yiu said, according to an international organization, well, if a user said to the market that we're going to build a lot of things, say, for example, someone said, I'm going to buy 5,000 pairs of shoes of crocodile leather, well, because for rent seeking, of course, people will start hoarding up crocodile skin. So can you design a program to find big data to help Hong Kong people? Well, if we are in the manufacturing industry, we may not be able to compete with others. Hong Kong is an advanced city. Well, the use of technology will help us, and we can use big data to help with our economy. So please, help Hong Kong to reduce the chance of project overrun. Well, some people may say, how serious is this project overrun issue? This is about our economics, our economy. Let me tell you, Hong Kong, the highway, the express rail, Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, the West Kowloon Cultural District, Liantang, Hengyun Wai, border-controlled facilities, and a number of others. The original project estimate stood as $297 billion. The latest estimate, well, some projects came to us to get further funding, some others did not, including the 3RS, the third runway. The latest figure is $417.7 billion. So, an overrun of $120.1 billion. If it's a private company, that company surely will close down. There was a tycoon of toy manufacturing. He bought the wrong type of spray paint for these toys, and the entire company went bust. If it's a company, it would go bust. But this is not a company, and is able to find money. That's why it will continue to squander money. The project overrun of $120.1 billion. Of course, the bill will be footed. We're talking about $5.4 billion of the Disneyland expansion. Well, it's take it or leave it. Well, there is another one after take it or leave it. Is
leave it. Why?
So, if Disneyland thinks the kitchen is too hot, leave. You're the chef. You can't ask us to solve the problem for you. It's give and take. Our government officials at the negotiation table did not say this. If the kitchen is too hot, leave it. That's what a government official should have said. So what is that negotiation? Where does it leave our economy? Mr. Ray Chan talked about the height restriction. I don't know whether he found that information or someone told him. When the agreement was signed, there was no plan to develop Lantau Island. That was only the Discovery Bay. And it's also a patriotic merchant surnamed Cha. Now it's different. What's our economy? Can you remember, Mr. Chan, 2030, how much money was used for reclamation? 400 billion. That's our economy. So don't say that I have digressed. Now they ask us for $400 billion for reclamation for the 2030. Tongchong, that has got a population of 200,000, actually turn out to have only 80,000 people living there. That's the drive of our economy. Did not come from your purview. That is innovation and technology, and the oldest trade, not prostitution, but something else. When it comes to economics, it's not like the conglomerates said to make more money. No, money is to be spent. Well, manual work and mental work of the labor force create wealth. How can there be a more suitable allocation to drive the economy? Because it will create wealth and at the same time create opportunities and a drive. We need a suitable allocation of wealth. Project overrun stands at $120.1 billion. And what do we get? Mr. Yang, you said that we don't have enough manpower for innovation and technology. So it's down to universities. We invest 50% less in our universities than our competitors. Well, Madam deputy chairman, you went to the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, but now youngsters don't even have the opportunity. They live in a subdivided flat that costs them $6,000. They don't even get a place in university. Our system enables only a handful to get rich. The land belongs to everyone. It's natural resources. If you want to create a value, then it relies on people working. The FTU has been talking about protecting our workers. Workers work very hard to develop the land, to turn it into valuable commodities so that it can be used to generate profit or even in speculation. It is not just to create more wealth. We have to create more resources that can be used by people. What have we done? What has this special administrative region government done? Mr. Yang, you are responsible for innovation and technology. Can you give us an account of your grand scheme in River Loop? River Loop is about land, not about innovation and technology. It's about enclosure, land, to hog land. It's land in NT Northeast and Northwest. The elephant projects are to link Hong Kong with the mainland. So where has this substantial amount of money gone? Land has been auctioned. Amount coming from land auction has exceeded income tax or tax revenue. And stock and securities market mostly is about its developer. We talk about the HNA group. I hear that Wang Qishan is also involved in it. It involves itself in land speculation. That means that, well, if you have land, then your stock will increase. Your stock value will increase. HNA has bought a piece of land with, say, $30,000 per square foot. And it can be further pushed up by another $10,000. I'm still talking about the economy. Our economy enables the richest people to buy valuable commodities, say properties, land, public transport. There is a person named Zhang. He has bought a lot of transport companies. All these resources that should have belonged to Hong Kong people are turned into commodities, securities, shares to make money. Mrs. Carrie Lam talked about mending the division. The division came from wealth gap. That came from the inequality between those who have money and power and those who don't have them. Well, people may buy things they don't need and then sell the same to those who need it in order to make a profit. According to Greek philosophy or some other scholars, we have to properly allocate resources and wealth created. Is that what we have been doing? No. Our banks have been bought up. Hang Seng Index shares have seen more and more mainland capital, close to 60%. What is our economy? Hong Kong government has turned these resources. Who is it? Mr. Pringles, John Tsang, talked about setting up a fund. So there should be a fund set up, money taken from the land reserve instead of putting it in the universal retirement protection. You can give me 4 hours and I can use it all up with ease. I don't have time. If we adopt the economics that benefit people, then we need money and put it into healthcare, education, and community building. The chairman has reminded members twice that according to the meeting arrangement, this session will end at